Good afternoon. My name is Surabhi Simha. Today I'll be walking you through the process of simulating muscle force using our biophysical muscle model. First, a brief dive into the physiology of where muscle active force comes from. Here are all of the structural components that make up our muscle, but the active force comes from all the way down here from these specialized proteins called myofilaments. And if we zoom in, we see there is a thin filament, also known as actin, and there's a thick filament, also known as myosin. Now, when these two attach to each other, you get a cross bridge. And it's this cross bridge that generates the active force that we can then scale up to be the whole muscle force. Now, these other components also generate force. In our model, we simulate them as series and parallel elastic elements to get the passive force. But the active force in our model comes from simulating the cross bridge. Okay, so how do we simulate a cross bridge? Well, we first simplify the cross bridge and call it a spring. And then we say that the spring or cross bridge can exist in one of two states. It can be detached or it can be attached. Now, it's only when the cross bridge is attached that it can generate force, which means to know the whole muscle force, we first need to count the number of attached cross bridges at any given point in time. But these cross bridges are continuously transitioning between being detached and attached. And the transition is governed by rate functions given by F and G. There's the attachment rate and detachment rate, which means we need to solve this equation to count the number of attached cross bridges. But these F and G, they're not individual numbers, they're actually functions. They're functions of the cross bridge length as shown on the right side. Now, our x-axis is delta x, and delta x is really the difference between the resting length of the cross bridge and the current length of the cross bridge. Now, these rate functions are sample functions that I'm showing here. Immediately after this presentation, you'll get to play with changing the shapes and see how that affects force generation. But for now, let's take this example and let's see how to solve this equation on the left. So let's pick one delta x for now, let's say 2.5, and let's say at this delta x of 2.5, we have 10 detached cross bridges. And if we look at the F curve, we see that these cross bridges are getting attached at a rate of 10, which means at the next time step, we're going to end up with 10 times 10, which is 100 new cross bridges that are attached. Similarly, let's say we have 5 currently attached cross bridges at this length of 2.5, and using the G curve, we can see that these are detaching at a rate of 2, which means we will end up with 10 detached cross bridges in the next time step. And by subtracting these two numbers, we can see that we will have 90 attached cross bridges at the next time step. Now, we did this manually. In the code that you use, we will use a numerical integrator that will do this for every time step, and that's how we'll count the number of cross bridges that are attached at every time step. Now that we know the number of attached cross bridges, we need to calculate the force from these attached cross bridges. But like I said before, a cross bridge is just a spring. So to get its force, we multiply its stiffness, which we take to be a constant, by its delta x, which is the length of the cross bridge. And then to get the total active force from our muscle, we sum up the force from all of the attached cross bridges. But what does the summing up look like? Well, at the top here is a schematic of our muscle model, which is actually a half sarcomere. It consists of a number of cross bridges, and these cross bridges are all at a range of lengths. In fact, if we were to plot the number of cross bridges as a function of the length at which they are currently at, we end up with a cross bridge distribution as shown in row 4 over here. So now the y-axis is the percentage of cross bridges that are currently bound or attached, and the x-axis is delta x like before. Now the shape of this distribution is a direct consequence of this bottom row, which consists of the rate functions that you saw earlier. They've just been collapsed onto a single plot. And you can see how at delta x of 0, we have the highest attachment rate in blue and the least detachment rate in red, which means that at steady state, most of our cross bridges would like to be attached at this length, and that's what gives us the shape of this curve. Now, if you want to calculate the force from all of these attached cross bridges, I showed you the math for one delta x. We just have to repeat that for all of the delta x's. And in the code that you will play with immediately after this talk, that's what happens. We have discretized the delta x into about 20 bins, and the code does the same math for each of those bins and then sums them up. But that can be time consuming. And another way to do this is to simplify this distribution or approximate it as a Gaussian distribution. And then we can just take the moment of that distribution to get the total number of attached cross bridges and then go to force in one step. Now, you might have heard of this as the distribution moment model, and you will hear more about it from Tim and Friedel in the upcoming lecture. So far, we've been talking about what happens at a fixed length. So you can see in row 2, this is the length of the muscle, and everything I described only relates to this point in time where the length is fixed. But of course, we also want to change the length of our muscle. So what happens when we say stretch our muscle? Now that was quite quick, so I'm going to go back and walk us through this video. So let's go back all the way to the beginning. So over here, you can see the time is changing, but the length is fixed. So in row 2, the length is fixed. And in row 3, you see that the force is also constant. I'm going to use force and stress interchangeably, assuming that we have fixed cross-sectional area. And now, because everything is at steady state, the cross-bridge distribution has also not changed. But then let's stretch the muscle and see what happens. Now you can see in row 2 that the length is increasing, and then the force is increased. In row 4, you see that the cross-bridge distribution has been pulled to the right. This is because the muscle is getting stretched and is pulling the cross bridges to the right. So how will this affect our force? Well, our force from each cross bridge is a spring force, which means when the cross bridges are pulled to the right, our delta x is higher, which means force from each cross bridge is higher. But then if we drop down to the bottom row, we see that our attachment and detachment rates are also functions of delta x. And at this larger delta x, our detachment rate is higher than attachment rate, which means we're going to start losing cross bridges that are attached pretty quickly. Which means even though if the force from one cross bridge is high, the total number of cross bridges is reducing. But in row 3, we see that we have not hit that point yet. The force is maximum, which means the net gains from the increased cross bridge length is higher than any reduction from losing cross bridges. But then if I continue stretching, we see that we do indeed reduce force, because now a cross bridge distribution height is reduced because the cross bridge is detached and they're starting to re-enter the pool closer to a delta x of 0. It's not exactly 0 because remember, we're still stretching our muscle, which means we're still stretching our cross bridges. And then if I continue stretching and reach a new length, we now see that the cross bridge distribution stabilizes back at a delta x of 0, and so our force also stabilizes. So this shows you how the muscle active force in our biophysical model essentially comes out of this cross bridge distribution. And this is the fundamentals of our model that you will need to understand to work with it. But we also have a few other key elements that we've added to the model that you'll play with immediately after, and that's because we care about behavioral relevance and getting the force to be physiological. So I'm going to briefly explain those extra features. One is activation. So far I'd left out this top row. What the top row is saying is just that for everything you saw, the activation of our muscle was at 100%. But the y-axis says Ca2+, not just activation. Well, why is that? So far, I talked about how our cross bridges exist in one of two states, but this assumes that every time a cross bridge wants to attach, it just can. In reality, though, our thin filament or actin sites exist in this deactivated state, and it's only by the addition of calcium ions that they become available for cross bridge attachment. And not just that, the number of currently attached cross bridges can also influence the number of actin sites that become available for attachment through a process known as cooperativity. So the sum of the models that you use today will use calcium concentration in terms of PCA as activation inputs. And for those of you interested, you can convert between this PCA of calcium concentration and traditional Hill-type muscle activation through a curve that looks like this. Now, the models you use today will also consist of another myosin state known as super-relaxed myosin or SRX. Now, this is when the myosin heads can also exist in the state where they're unavailable for attachment, and they enter the pool of attachment through FSRX and GSRX attachment and detachment rates. Now, these rates are a function of the current muscle force, unlike F and G, which are a function of the current cross-bridge length. Now, we included these two states because our primary interest is balance and pendulum test relevant behavior, And in these behaviors, we really care about the transient force and the periodic force. And these states let us tune this recovery of force for the periodic stretch and also the transient force response. Finally, with this slide, I just want to say that we can use our biophysical model to generate the Hill-type force velocity and force length curves, which we can then use to see how behavior differs if we were to use our biophysical model versus a Hill-type model that was generated from the same biophysical model. And with that, thank you for listening and have fun simulating.